Despite all the glory man is capable of achieving, whether it's building a fire or producing electricity to send a message to someone halfway around the world, or traversing over oceans, whether over them in an airplane or through them on a ship, still the paycheck is the god of the day. This is Trendsetter of the Mind, and that's Argos. Today we're going to be talking about the movie Wolf of Wall Street. Who would turn away 100 grand in return for a little humiliation? What fears would someone be willing to face for $1 million? Money talks, as they say, but it keeps even more secrets. Flash a little green and people become slaves. Currency is a memento, a souvenir of antiquity, developed thousands of years ago, but we are still living by survival of the fittest, even with all of our accomplishments and advancements. How many of us have been so desperate to make ends meet because of the built-in competition and aggression of our forced hierarchical system, which we think is vital to make society run, that we have even considered or stooped down to doing indescribable and shameful things. Money has long been the source of fraud, theft, physical confrontations, greed, envy, and revenge of all kinds, not to mention the inequality created between the rich and the poor. Let me ask you this. If someone gave you $100 to eat something out of a trash can, would you? How about $10,000 to put a hit on someone, since apparently green pieces of paper can equal the value of a human life? Now, what do you think the price is for a single mom to offer herself to someone so she can be able to afford to feed her children when she's all out of other options? If you didn't notice it in the movie, I hope you're starting to see by now what a wretched thing money represents. But we are meant to adore it. There is no line to be drawn for what people will not do. And it kind of reminds me of in cartoons when you see a character that gets the dollar signs in its eyes and it's just so focused. And the infamous scene between DiCaprio and McConaughey when they're doing the he even says how pretty much the stock markets, they're all rigged, money is fake. He refers to it as like pixie dust, and their conversation revolves around a fugazi, another term for fake. It's all just made up. If you want to believe in authority or if you want to believe in money, then sure, it'll have value, but otherwise it's nothing. Instead of appreciating how witty and cunning someone can be, or treasuring the liberty of the mind, and aspiring to live noble and epic lives, we are born into a culture that attributes worth to superficiality. How much is your salary? How well do you dress? Are you famous or do you know someone who is? None of these things are you, just things to have or to be able to flaunt with a reputation. People want to feel entitled so they can associate with others in a petty or condescending way, again, because society has been infiltrated by hierarchy for those who want to feel like they are above us, namely the elites. In order to cope in this sort of deranged establishment, we take jobs we don't want but have to work at. We have mental breakdowns for doing the same thing over and over. We suck up taking orders from bosses, customers, and clients without bursting out, while inside we are boiling over with hatred because we could be spending our time more productively. We wake up in bad moods because we already know what the day of repetition has in store, and many of us come to put aside our lifelong goals because we have become good at our jobs and tolerate it just enough to convince ourselves that we're happy or content. There are some who receive ample opportunity and like their jobs, and I'll talk about that more in the next episode. But so many of us have to work multiple jobs so we don't end up on the road starving and forced to eat out of dumpsters or degrade ourselves in order just to pay rent. It deeply bothers me that the longer capitalism functions, the more suffering and depravity will continue to go on. Obesity, ignorance, racism, mental illness, infant mortality, and even cats and dogs abandoned can be traced back to the almighty dollar in some way. Moreover, how many numerous cases have there been of companies that are driven more by profit and consumerism than anything else? They too have to survive, so corporations often put out products they know will harm people or the environment, but that is a game we have to play by, right? Then, investigative journalists can be bribed with money, you see what I'm getting at? To twist the opinion of the public, or they can be blackmailed if they leak any toxic but nonetheless true data and information, because why? There's too much money at stake. I'll go into much more detail in my last book of all the ways we're harmed because of this corrupt culture, whether it's the GMO food we put into our system, the air and the water that is polluted, the chemicals we use in our shampoo and conditioner. The list literally goes on, and I've referred to it in past videos. But if you take a look at my first two books, they'll definitely give you a very general outlook. The recommended reading for today comes to us by a man named Lysander Spooner. Kind of a weird one. I believe he was born in the 1800s, and he's an American. And even back then, he knew that the world was run by the banks, the Rothschilds, and you can tell how intelligent he is because he wasn't subjected to the mass education where we're all standardized that we all get today. Most likely he had a mentor, and you could just tell how intelligent he is in his works. Vices Are Not Crimes and No Treason, and both of them, man, to me they're very influential, and I quote them quite a bit in my books just because it's almost like forgotten wisdom that in today people don't want to look into anymore, or for whatever reason, I don't know. The accompanying documentaries for today, the first one is Usury War on Humanity, and it talks about interest rates, which I discussed last episode with the Federal Reserve, and just how evil that whole concept is, interest, to keep people indebted forever. The next one is a hard look at universal basic income, UBI, and it's presented by Freedomtaker. And it's this older guy. You can tell the experience in his research and in his words. And pretty much we're moving towards universal basic income right now with all the stimulus packages and everything. And I've already said how after that is socialism, and then next comes communism. But that's what all the stimulus packages are. Universal basic income, to just get us used to this, relying on the government and the money that they give us for free. The last one is solid proof the M-Demic was pre-planned to the last detail during Event 201. And if you haven't heard of Event 201, it's not conspiracy, it's panel experts, professionals, politicians, whatever, all coming together months before the virus was announced, and they said, should this ever happen in the near future, meaning they already knew, and they put, again, how it even says, to the last detail, what will be coming this year, 2020. And you might be wondering, okay, but how is that related to money? Has to do with, they mentioned the digital dollars, and how eventually our identity will be connected to that in some way, and will be allowed or denied access to things, all based on technology, and especially with the coming vaccines. And speaking of that, it's funny how, tied to money again, we're meant to, our role models for a reason are meant to be the stars, the musicians, the actors. We're meant to watch the Grammys and the Academy Awards, for some reason we're meant to care about complete strangers. And the same PR firms that were used to get us into wars now use that same propaganda with these influencers to tell people, hey, listen to these celebrities. Look, they're so affected by the virus. And then these celebrities go on their social media and say, hey, you should really follow government mandates. You should listen to the doctors and the lectures that they provide. And I've also said this before, they're either just useful idiots that don't know that they're being used, or they're shills who just get paid to go along with the banking corporations. So just making sure I got everything done. But funny enough, that just like how big oil companies, if they were to say, hey, we might in the future pollute the water and millions of animals and sea life might die, but we're going to protect ourselves from any lawsuits, so that way in the future, if this happens, there won't be any repercussions. And now the same companies that are giving us the vaccines, they're saying, hey, we know this might have a lot of side effects on human life, but we want to be exempt from any of that kind of thing. So again, it just shows they already know that it's going to hurt us. Look into all the things that go into vaccines. There's so much just bad stuff, to put it in simple layman's terms. So last thing I just wanted to finish up with is with a shout out to all those in Berlin and Germany who have had their fair share of propaganda in the past with the Nazis and everything, and they know what tyranny can do. And the media, of course, isn't going to cover this, and they'll say only maybe a couple thousand are protesting, but watch the footage. Hundreds of thousands of people are taking to the streets saying, we're not going to wear our muzzles anymore that our masters put on us, and their clothes and the flags that they're holding, it's all symbolic of saying, we want our freedom, we want our independence. We're not going to go into stores anymore and have to wear these masks. We're not going to be socially distanced. Hundreds of thousands of them are taking to the streets without a mask and showing like this is all a scam. How come all the virologists, the experts about viruses, that disagree with Fauci and all the biased government hired professionals and experts, how come all these people that disagree, they're not given any attention? How come they're all silenced? How come they're all censored? And basically I'm just showing, like how I've talked about with Inception, we're all living in a dream world with one layer stacked upon layer, and it's all make-believe. It all just depends on if you want to go along with it and condone it, or if you want to join me and the few other people who are brave enough to be like, no, we're not going to put up with this anymore, and stand up to it.